Hello, good afternoon. I'm Rabbi Sofer from Sofer on site, and I'm here to talk to you about the importance of the Holy Rollers program. First of all, we have to understand that any Sefer Torah, any Torah scroll is made out of skin, we call it cloth in Hebrew, parchment, and being made in such a way, it needs to have certain items and certain actions need to be taken to preserve it in good condition. So the Holy Rollers program was designed to train the people in your congregation, whether the members of the congregation, the members of the clergy, to be able to know what to do and what not to do in order to preserve the Torah scrolls. The next and the following video will be geared towards showing you a little bit about what we do when we have a Holy Rollers. So the following video is geared towards showing you a little bit about what we do when it comes to a Torah training program called the Holy Rollers, for you to know how to take care of your scrolls. Enjoy. Hello, welcome back. At this point in time, we are going to demonstrate how a Torah is supposed to be rolled, and the steps you can take into observing what's inside the Torah and finding out if there are any issues with it. And for this part, you're going to need probably 3 people. One will be on this side. That's our friend Rabbi Yaakov. One will be on this side. That'll be myself. And here in the middle, you have Rabbi Golan, who's going to be going through the actual columns, the actual parchment, and he'll be able to spot if there are any issues. We'll talk about the actual issues in the next section of this video. Go.
Go.
As we can observe, Rabbi Yaakov is rolling the Torah in a very, very, very appropriate manner. First thing is he's not tightening it so much so that the friction of the parchment does not create heat, because the heat is very bad for the skin. And of course, at the same time, he's not making it too loose, because when you leave it too loose, it can create pockets inside the parchment, which can at the same time fold over and will develop into actual creases. And those creases, obviously, later on will affect the parchment, will affect the ink, will start cracking off, and the letters will start peeling off from the parchment. And that is one of the issues that we observe in the Torah nowadays. As I'm holding on this side, you can see that the best way to do it is when the person is rolling, like you have another member of the group, of your Holy Rollers group, holding the Torah. Make sure that it's rolled appropriately. Now you've seen how Torah is supposed to be rolled in the proper manner. As we mentioned previously, while the Torah is being rolled, you're always going to have one of the members of the group, of the Holy Rollers group, look inside the parchment and try and spot any issues that may be present. For instance, and we're going to make a close-up here to show you some of the things that you may be able to find, hopefully not, but you'll probably find on your Torahs if they haven't been looked at in a while. I'm going to point out some of the letters here in this section, which you can see are fading out, and the ink has spilled off the parchment, which has created that light color on them. If we proceed that way on the Torah, you're going to find that as you look through, you're going to find some of the other sections with letters that are similar to those. This section right here, which has a bit of a white cloud, which is part of the powder that covers the Torah on the back side of it, and gets loose, and it covers the parchment. And you have letters like these ones. Also, you have stains in the parchment like this. Okay, and those are some of the issues that you need to perhaps journal or write down in a journal to be able to keep track of what's going on. There's more issues like that, like those stains here in this section right here. Could have been some sort of liquid. You have another ones here. And as we move forward, I want to show you specifically another section where you're actually going to find that the Torah has these dark clouds. And I like to put in this section right here, for instance. And those dark clouds that you can see around the letters are caused by the ink itself that dries up and rubs on the parchment, and by doing so creates this dark effect. All of that needs to be cleaned so that we can actually see what the condition of the letters are underneath in order for us to repair them. Finally, I'd like to show you a particular section right here, which, if you look clearly, has a lot of letters that are literally peeling off the parchment, and they will need to be rewritten. This section will need to be cleaned first, and then the letters will need to be written. Here I want to point out also that sometimes even the Torahs have been worked on even if they have been worked on. You have sections like this where the letters actually don't look so great because the repair was not done in such an appropriate manner. And so therefore we're going to have to not only clean this, but probably fix the issues on these letters and make them look kosher once again. Now we're going to talk about a very important aspect of the preservation of your scrolls, and that is the airing out of your scrolls. As we mentioned earlier, the Torah is made out of skin of a kosher animal. We call it klaf in Hebrew, which is the parchment. Now the parchment, because it's made out of skin, needs specifically oxygen to be able to stay in a good condition. Now most of the Torahs, sadly, do not go through this process. As a matter of fact, the majority of them will likely spend their lifetime rolled up inside the Aron Kodesh, inside the Ark. And because of that, they do not get enough flow of oxygen to be able to be maintained in proper condition. Now, when you learn, what you're going to learn in the Holy Rollers program is how to air out your Torah in an appropriate manner, how many times you're supposed to do this in a year, what are the techniques that can be used in order to increase the amount of airing time, etc. And hopefully, once you learn all these techniques, you'll be able to maintain your Torahs in good condition.
1.
As we mentioned earlier, the Torah normally spends most of its time rolled up inside the Aron Kodesh, inside the actual closet, which is pretty much built around the Torah. Now, in most cases, these are not adequate and do not have the sufficient temperature control conditions to be able to maintain Torahs at a safe range of temperature. Added to that would be the issue of the humidity. Now, in some states, for instance, southern states, in Florida, humidity can be very high throughout the spring and the summer months. So all of those can add up to cause really damaging effects on the parchment. Now, Holy Rollers program will not only teach you what are the temperatures, the temperature range rather, where the Torah is supposed to be or will be safe, but also will show you what kind of steps you can take in order to control the humidity, to make sure that you're always aware of what kind of humidity percentage is in the Aron, is in the Ark, and then through that you'll be able again to preserve your scrolls in better condition. Aside from that, also we can always inspect your Aron Kodesh, your Ark, and see if there are any modifications that can be done in order to increase again the level of oxygen flowing into the Aron, and etc. So all of that you will learn throughout the Holy Roll. Another very important point that we need to talk about is your Aron Kodesh, which means your Ark, where the Torah spends most of its time. As you know, most of the Torahs are rolled up and they spend their lifetime inside of this Ark. Some of them probably don't even get to be used as much as they should. Because of that, it's very important that we know what kind of state is the Ark in. Added to that, we have to consider the factor of the weather. In many cases, you have a fluctuation of temperature from very high temperatures during the summer months to very low temperatures during the winter, and in between, obviously, because of the controlled climate conditions inside of a synagogue, that can create a very, very fluctuating range of humidity. Any of those factors, again, can affect the Torah very, very deeply and in a negative manner. So through the Holy Rollers program, you will learn what is that range of temperature where the Torah can actually be maintained at a safely, and also you will learn the level of percentage of humidity that the Aron Kodesh, that the Ark should have, in order again for the Torah to be preserved appropriately. Any of those, of course, will come along with suggestions and techniques of how to improve even the look of your Torah, of your Ark, and if there are any modifications that can be done in terms of the flow of oxygen or air, etc. All of that, of course, will be explained as well. In addition, very, very important and a crucial aspect of the rolling of the Torah scrolls will be to have what we call a Torah guard. As you can see in this particular scroll, we don't have a Torah guard at the bottom of the portion of the parchment, which means that this area right here, as we roll, can actually rub against this part of the disc of the Eitz Chaim, of the poles, and because of that can cause the friction. The friction will cause, if we can make a close-up right here, we'll see that there's a little bit of little bit of creases that are starting to appear. Now those creases will develop into tears, and those tears later on will need to be patched in order to prevent the tears from extending from here at the bottom all the way inside into the parchment. Now we're going to see an example of what a Torah with a Torah guard looks like. Here we have an example of what a Torah guard looks like. This device can be attached to the bottom of the parchment, or the bottom of the poles rather, to make sure that as the parchment is being rolled, this section, it will move, it will float, it will roll around with it, reducing the amount of friction and thus reducing the amount of tears at the bottom of your parchment. There are several versions of it. This one right here is made out of an acrylic type, plastic type material. And then of course you have a more traditional one made out of wood, and they come in different sizes. There's a little more of a thin one, which can be used in a smaller Torah. And this is the standard version of it, and it's rather easy to install. All you have to do is remove the screws that are on each side of the Torah guard, separate the two plates, put them around, one at the top, one at the bottom, connect them in this section of the Torah, and put the screws together. And once you've done that, then you'll have a floating Torah guard, which will help preserve the bottom part of your parchment without any tears or creases. Our next step will be to analyze the concept of the Eitz Chaim. Translated means the tree of life, which are the poles that the Torah is attached to. One of the most crucial aspects of this is to make sure that your Eitz Chaim are in good condition and are sturdy and well made. This particular Eitz Chaim, for instance, you can see that the disc at the bottom is very loose. The inside part of it has been fixed, and we can only assume that it's because there was damage on it. You see the glue that is flowing in this section of the disc because the disc probably cracked in the middle, and by putting the glue they fixed it up. Now in most cases this can be a temporary solution. We always recommend that when there is a crack or a breakage on your Eitz Chaim, on your poles at the bottom part of the Torah, you should always replace them, because eventually this will break, will snap again, and you will have issues with the Torah. Now we want to make sure that when you always get your poles, you get poles that are well made, that are made appropriately, that are sturdy, and that in turn don't have this type of problem with breaking. Now I'm going to demonstrate the proper technique of doing Hagba. Now we know that most of the pressure, like we said before, on the Torah, when you're doing Hagba, when you're lifting it up, is going to be at the bottom portion of it. And I've seen rather, in many occasions, people trying to lift up the Torah directly from the table, which can be very damaging, both on the parchment and on the actual poles. The proper technique would be to actually hold on to the poles, pull out part of the scroll, bend our knees as much as necessary, and then lift up the Torah, in which case it's a lot easier. Also, when we put it down, we want to make sure we bend our knees. Put part of the Torah first outside, then push it in, and then roll it inside, and we're ready to be able to lift it up again, take it towards the seat, and do the Galilah, which is the wrapping of the Torah. As we mentioned before, we are going to now demonstrate the actual proper technique of doing Galilah on the Sofer Torah. First thing is we want to make sure that after the Hagba, when we place the Torah back on the bima, or on the table on which it's being read, the seam, the actual connection between the two sections of the scroll has to remain in the middle. And when we roll it, we want to make sure that the parchment is rolled, the cloth is rolled in a very nice and tight manner. It does have to be extremely tight, but firm, and it cannot be too loose. So that way when we pull it back again, we lift it, we're ready to do the Galilah. Now we're going to demonstrate with Rabbi Yaakov what the proper Galilah technique is. Now you know how to do Galilah. On our final step, we are going to talk about the concept of Galilah. Galilah means to wrap the Torah. We put the belt, which is called a gartel, traditionally around the Torah, and then the cover on top. But one of the issues that we find constantly is that the gartel, the belt on the Torah, is not appropriate and does not fit the Torah well. I'll give you an example. This right here is one of the gartels, one of the belts that we found in one of the Torahs that we were working on. As you can see, it's very big and it's very loose. So when you apply this to a Torah of this size, and I'm just going to do it on the table so you can actually see what it looks like, it is very difficult to try and keep the Torah together in a proper manner. because the belt is too big. And you can see the extra space that is left there. Now, that versus a belt which has Velcro. That's what we advocate the most. We actually advise this should be Velcro, it's much better. And this actually has, it's a better size and it's going to fit the Torah appropriately. So when we close it together, there is no gap in between and the Torah is held together rather firm.